Hey, you're listening to the Start Something podcast, where we take you behind the scenes of the founder journey, breaking down what it takes and how it can change your life. My name is Bailey.
And my name is Shruti, and today we're going to be talking to you about solo versus co-founders, and what does that look like?
Yeah, this is one of the biggest questions that I've been asked as a student turned entrepreneur is, how do you find your co-founder?
Yeah.
I've been asked that question all the time, so I'd love to turn it over to you first though.
Yeah.
How did you find your co-founder, and what advice do you have for people when it comes to finding the right person that you're going to be on this journey with for quite a few years and through quite a few ups and downs?
Yeah. Well, thank you for starting off with the question. I actually have a little bit of a funny story. I thought that I could do it all by myself when I first started. So I actually was like, I don't need a co-founder. Like, who needs one? Like, I know everything. While I appreciate the boss girl mentality that I had, within 3 months, I realized it's not possible without help. Like there's only so many things that I can do. So in parallel, I started looking for a co-founder, and it kind of happened a bit naturally in that sense, where I kept socializing my message about what I'm working on to numerous people, whether it was my old college classmates and whether it was my coworkers who at Microsoft who didn't mind that I was working on side projects at the time, and even my friends and family, right? And through that, I started building a network of potential co-founders. Literally, it was right in front of me this whole time, right? I spent 4 years in college with students who are bright, who studied computer science. I was looking specifically for a technical co-founder. So I'm throwing a lot at once, but it takes knowing yourself and your strengths and weaknesses, and then how does that complement in what kind of skill set you need. So for me, I really needed someone who had a technical background because I was the CEO. I was more of the product-oriented person, and I needed someone who could help me code and get things together and be smart and fast.
Yeah.
And so I'll take a pause there. Are you up to speed so far?
Yes, I'm following.
Okay. Any questions, or should I keep?
No, please continue.
Okay. So lo and behold, Karthik, who actually was one of my classmates, he listened to my idea and he was like, dude, what you're working on is sick. Can I give you $10,000? And I was like, whoa, dude.
Wow,
like,
your friend just had $10,000.
That's a separate question where maybe we could call Karthik on for a podcast
impressive.
episode. But I was like, dude, I think you can keep your money right now, because at the time, I was really looking for just a co-founder, right? I wasn't really looking for money or anything at that point.
What a great problem to have.
I know.
No, too many people trying to give me money. Okay.
But instead, I actually went to him and I was like, look, I would really like your advice, and I would like your feedback on how to grow this company. And that was, without me knowing it, kind of the genesis of me and Karthik becoming co-founders, because every week he would hop on the phone with me, he would give me feedback, he'd help me scope the problem out from a technical point of view. And every week, we just got closer and closer. That's when we started developing more of a co-founder type relationship. And it translated from that into, hey dude, this is my strengths, these are your weaknesses, here's how we can improve. Here's what went well this week, here's how we can improve. And that happened for about 2 months, wow. I think, every week, where I just noticed how invested he actually was. He wasn't just putting his money where his mouth was, right? He was actually interested genuinely in my idea, and it wasn't just a compliment. And we were working on this together, and it felt quite natural. At some point, I came to him and I was like, I think we need to work together. I can't do this without you at this point. We're both so invested in this. And so that was the genesis of me and him. I won't lie, I was talking to numerous people, but he was the person who really stood out to me. And I won't say it was perfect, that journey, finding him and figuring out our relationship. Obviously we have ups and downs, but I think the thing that brings both of us together is the fact that we have the same core values. We actually have quite a similar background in the sense that we both studied computer science. We worked on a lot of projects together. So that's also another pro tip and trick to those listening to us today. And then lastly, I was also looking for someone who wanted to make a big impact, right? And someone who wanted to be disciplined and stay focused, because this journey is crazy, right? There's ups, there's downs. So yeah, that's my story.
That was a great answer, a great story. And I want to highlight a couple things that you mentioned that I really agree with, and I just believe like could not be overstated. And the first one was about how you need to create diversity in your team if you're going to actually be able to solve the challenges that every founder or co-founders face. And diversity in terms of skill set and I think values alignment is like, maybe you don't want diversity there, but like having that skill set diversity and maybe even having like a little bit of diversity in terms of like how you see the world even, and being able to look ahead and maybe figure out like, okay, I see this on the horizon, like this might be a concern, whereas, you know, you might see something else. I think being able to look for that kind of like problem solving diversity is so important.
Yeah.
And, you know, we all have blind spots, like you mentioned. And so finding someone really early on who can balance the areas where we have weaknesses is just so important. So
yeah, and
I love that.
Oh, I thank you so much for highlighting that. I think like to add to what you're saying as well, when I was the solo founder and I thought I could do it by myself, I found myself going through my week just evaluating, okay, what parts did I enjoy? Okay, I really enjoy talking to my customers. What parts do I not enjoy? Okay, I really hate coding. You know, like I really hate putting things together in that perspective. And that told me what my strengths and weaknesses were. And I literally documented that on a paper. And I think that's like a great recommendation for those who are looking to find a co-founder. Write down what you're good at and be honest about what you're bad at, because I think a lot of people struggle with that key part, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I love that you mentioned how important it is to know yourself in order to pick a good co-founder, because if we aren't familiar with our weaknesses, then it'll be much harder to find someone who can balance us out with their strengths.
Yeah.
So I do really believe, and I agree with you, that we have to do that soul searching and we have to be honest about what we bring to the table and maybe what we don't bring to the table if we're going to build the teams that are going to help us get to the next level. So I loved that point. I also really appreciated what you shared about your like co-founder dating experience, where you were meeting with different people who might be a good potential co-founder to figure out if there is a fit there. I think that's a really good approach. Honestly, that is something that I didn't do.
Oh,
and I don't regret it, don't get me wrong. I think I won the lottery with my co-founder, but looking back, it is such an important decision that whenever people ask me about it, I always say like, you know, do your homework, like, you know, really get to know somebody.
Yeah.
And even though that's the advice that I give, it's not really the advice that I lived by when I was choosing my co-founder. And the reason that I don't regret it is because I chose my co-founder based on a gut feeling. And I do really believe that even though it is important to like do your homework and, you know, ask a lot of questions and really get to know people, I also believe that we tend to get a gut feeling with someone right away, and then we justify our feelings about that person logically, but we actually made a decision about them emotionally. So we get that like that sense of this is good, or this fit doesn't work. And then over time, we use our experiences, we use data to like back up something that we already knew from the start. I think that's something that like you and I experienced too when we first met. It's like, oh great, we're best friends. We've known each other for 30 seconds. And every time we've hung out since then, we kind of act the same, you know?
Yeah, we do. We feed off of each other. We grow from each other. But I have a question for you that might be maybe slightly hard. How do you listen to your gut? Like, how do you develop that skill set? Because it's not easy. And I struggled with it for a long time.
It's not. And I think that it's something that I have really learned how to do, and something that I actually invest time in every single day. This is one of the reasons why my writing practice is so important to me, because it actually helps me know what I think and how I feel about things. And I can go to my journal and I could ask, what should I do? And if I don't stop to think and I just keep writing, then I'm using a part of my brain that is more intuitive than logical per se. And so by not overthinking it and not introducing the monkey mind into my decision-making process, then it's actually easier to get in touch with my intuition. I also love this technique that I may have shared with you before, but it's where you flip a coin. And you can use a coin flip to figure out what your body is actually asking for. Because let's say you have to make a decision about going left or right. And if you flip a coin, you might, you say, okay, heads is left, tails is right. And then if you flip a coin, then before the coin even lands, you can recognize in yourself that you have a slight preference. But even if you can't recognize it in the amount of time since flipping the coin, as soon as it lands, if you have that instinct that says, well, maybe I'll just flip the coin again. Oh, I wanted tails. Like it landed heads. Oh, maybe I'll just flip it one more time. Boom, that's your answer.
Yeah.
You're not actually letting the coin tell you what to do. You're using a coin flip to like put the decision-making power into the hands of something else.
Yeah.
And then recognize what your preferences tell you as soon as it lands. So those are two really specific things that we can do to like get in touch with our intuition. But I also think that sometimes our intuition doesn't just whisper. Like sometimes I do think our intuition speaks very loudly. And I've had a few moments like that in my life, and deciding on my co-founder was actually one of those moments. I knew right away.
Okay, so let's not keep the cliffhanger going. Like, let's break that open.
Okay.
Can you tell us about how you met your co-founder?
Yeah, so we were in a class together. I was actually his TA for a UC Berkeley class that was also a startup competition. So I'd gone the year before, and this next year I went back, and I was there as the TA, he was there as a student, and since it's a competition, all these students are in different groups, and he was the chief technology officer for his group. And I remember seeing him present one day, and he just had this total nonchalance and confidence that made me feel like, oh my gosh, he really knows his stuff.
Yeah.
And I do feel like I'm pretty confident, but I'm definitely not nonchalant. Like my co-founder is someone who sits in the back of the class, if he even shows up to class, and he doesn't need to study very much, and he'll still get the highest grade. But I'm someone who needs to sit in the front, take diligent notes, go to office hours, make flashcards.
Ask 100 questions.
Yeah, I have to like really pour myself into something to do well in a class.
Yeah.
And so I appreciated that he brought a very different approach and affect to the table than me. And throughout some of the ups and downs at Perimeter, it's actually been such a gift, because whenever I'm struggling or I don't know, what the right decision is, I've noticed that he's not struggling. And don't get me wrong, like we do go back and forth, but I know whenever I'm having a hard time and I don't know exactly what needs to be done, he really stands by me, and he's so confident that I always know that together we'll be able to figure something out. Yeah. And I think having that level of confidence on the team and that kind of nonchalance, like we totally have this in the bag, is so valuable in an environment where there's so much risk and so much room for failure, and so much, in many ways, there's a requirement for failure. You have to put yourself out there over and over again. Not everything will work out. And so having someone on your team who is willing to just say, like, we got this, is so critical.
And I love what you said over there, that you both are in it together. That's something I really relate with my co-founder, which is like, we're going through the ups together, we're going through the downs together. And something that we reflected on when we did even sell the company, I was like, no one else knows exactly how I feel right now besides you, right? And even when we go through that, we went through so many failures, like it was quite defeating. And every single time, it's the thing I really go back on is I have you to like really empathize the situation with, because everyone else can be a sounding board, but only he can understand what the feeling is and the experience that I went through, which is something that I think you're really alluding to too, and bouncing off of each other and just being there for each other, right?
Definitely. And a lot of people say that the founder journey is very lonely, and I have so much respect for anyone who's a founder, but I have a special place in my heart full of respect for solo founders, just because I do think it is lonely at a different level. Now, whenever I hear someone say the founder journey is very lonely, I do understand, and I definitely can like empathize with that experience. But something that I'm also really grateful for at this stage in my founder journey is recognizing that, if I am feeling that way, like if I am feeling lonely, let me put myself out there into this community. Let me invest in a community. Let me invest in my relationships. Because if we're feeling lonely, I think it's really important not to just say, every founder is lonely, or the dreaded phrase, it's lonely at the top. I think if we get to that point, we need to ask ourselves, who else around us needs friendship and like needs someone to listen or needs mentorship, etc. And I think as long as we're pouring ourselves into our communities with whatever time we have, I do think that really changes the dynamic of an experience, whether you're a co-founder and you have someone that you can go to, like you said, or you're a solo founder and you don't really have those relationships.
We talked about this in one of our previous episodes, building a personal board of advisors. And I think for those of you who haven't gone and listened to that episode, please go and check that out. It tells you all about how to continue to have that sense of community as you're going through such a hard journey. And Bailey, I just want to wrap up this episode given the time. So what's a couple takeaways? Like I love leaving with actions. How can someone go and find their co-founder if they want to get started today?
Well, first, I want to highlight what you shared about really getting to know yourself. I think the most important thing that we can do is understand our strengths and our weaknesses and focus on finding someone who can balance us out. I know that we're really emphasizing that in this episode, but I think it just couldn't be overstated, that getting to know ourselves and understanding what we bring to the team and what we don't bring to the team will not only help us find a co-founder, it will really help us get clear about who our first employees should be, our first advisors, and maybe even which investors we should bring onto our cap table. And so all of those people are going to play a role at the company and in your success. And so understanding who brings what to the table and maybe what isn't there already is so critical to choosing our co-founders, our employees, etc. So that's really critical. Really getting to know yourself, looking for that diversity of skill set, and then trusting your gut in all of your relationship building. So if you meet someone and they're great on paper and they seem like they check all those boxes, but you've got this feeling in your stomach like maybe this isn't it, trust that feeling. Like you do not have to rush into things. You can, like you said, you can have the conversation with someone, get to know someone, maybe even, work on a project together, whether it's your company or not, and get to know if this relationship is something that is effective and fluid and positive and uplifting. And looking for those things is just so critical. So I think if you're looking for those in a potential co-founder, you're really getting to know yourself. You're always going to be able to find people who can come alongside you and help achieve whatever goals you're working towards.
I think you summarized that perfectly, and just in time for us as well.
Just in time. Yeah, we're really trying to keep these episodes to 20 minutes. Yeah. Because we know we could make them 120 minutes.
Yeah, we could talk for days. We were talking for days before we
I know. We should have just turned the camera on. But anyway, thank you so much for joining us today. I hope that helps answer the question of where do I get started with finding a co-founder, and we will see you in the next episode.